Over the last few years, there has been a great deal of emphasis placed on the number 97% as the climate agreement amongst scientists that the humans are causing global warming. But where did this number come from? I was curious, particularly as that number 97% doesn't seem to have changed over the last few years, despite multiple studies having been completed. So I decided to have a look at the studies which came up with that number. So that number came from a study done by a man called Cook, who worked at Queensland University in Australia. He looked at 12,000 scientific papers. Of those, roughly a third were to do with climate change, and of those 97% agreed. This is the origin of the 97% number. But the question then becomes, why did he pick those 12,000 papers? It is not true that a third of scientific papers are written about climate change. So there must have been some emphasis made, and it is clear that he was not really looking for a figure like this, but the point to be made is that in a normal situation, 97% would essentially be, this is what is happening, and we can now move on to what we do about it. Most probability studies work to a 98% likelihood rating. If we look at some of the other studies that have happened more recently, a man called Powell, James Powell, did a study that took in a great deal more time, from 1991 to 2015, looking at over 50,000 papers. And he found that of those 50,000 papers, 99.94% of them agreed that humans are causing climate change. This is a very different number, far, far higher, and that means, putting it in perspective, that means 6 scientists out of 10,000 would disagree that humans are causing climate change, or that their papers did not clearly show that. He then looked, because he was doing it in 2017, at papers that had been done in the 2 years since the end of his year bracket of 2015. There were 10,000 in this bracket, and he found that of those 10,000 papers, 99.99% of them agreed humans were causing climate change. This is as close to consensus as we're likely to get. So, we have to then have a think about, why are we looking for 100% consensus? That says that no one disagrees, and yet we allow lobbyists and scientists from fossil fuel companies to submit papers. They have a clear requirement to be able to continue to trade in fossil fuels, and therefore their studies should not be given the same weight. So, I've split those into carbon emitters and carbon excavators. These people, obviously, they are making millions or billions of pounds from their trade in fossil fuels, be those coal or petrol or diesel. The longer they delay things, the more money they get, but also the more rapid our requirements are to clean up our industry. So, we should not be listening. We should also bear in mind that some of the loudest climate change deniers are or were CEOs of these companies. So, in conclusion, with a 99.99% of papers published in the last 2 years agreeing that humans are causing climate change, the debate is now over. As such, we need to stop debating this with climate change deniers and move on to working out how we will deal with it. We need to stop listening to fossil fuel companies, allowing them to push the argument in directions that do not make sense. This has happened in the past, such as with Shell and Exxon delaying or not releasing studies that made clear the effect they were having. Thank you for listening.